I surrender to the Almighty my mind, speech and body. Vanakkam. Thirukkural by Thiruvalluvar is a book that shows a way for humans to grow in the path of love. This path is called as the Aram for our life. Aram is nothing but the order in nature. I think we are quite familiar with the overall structure of the book. There are three big sections called Paal. There is the Paal, the Paal and Inbam Paal. Within each Paal, there are smaller sections called Iyal, and within each Iyal, there are even smaller chapters called Adhikarams. The first Paal is Paal, and here the Aram are discussed. What Aram? Thiruvalluvar talks about Illaram and Thuravaram. Illaram is the Aram to develop attachments, and Thuravaram is the Aram to let go of attachments in life. So the Paal talks about these two Arams. Now we are following Parimelazhagar's commentaries to understand the book. Before entering the book, there is a section called Preface. The preface is called as the Payiram in Tamil, and we have now entered the Payiram of Parimelazhagar's work. In the first line of his preface, Parimelazhagar makes a promise to the readers. He says that there is a place where the happiness is everlasting and the place is also everlasting. It is possible for humans to reach such an existence, and that place is called as Veedu. And only humans who have six senses have the ability to plan their lives and get to Padam and Veedu. Parimelazhagar promises that for those who are willing to put in such an effort, I will show the way to Padam and Veedu. And in order to show the way, we need to understand four things. They are Aram, Porul, Inbam and Veedu. All of what I have said so far is the first line of the preface. Today we will continue further. Now Parimelazhagar says that in order to reach Padam and Veedu, we need to understand Aram, Porul, Inbam and Veedu. Four things. Then ideally we would expect the book to have four topics, isn't it? But the book has only three big sections called Paal. There is Paal that talks about Aram, the Paal that talks about wealth or Porul, and Inbam Paal that talks about Inbam or pleasure. Where is the fourth section called Veedu? Why didn't Thiruvalluvar write a fourth section? Parimelazhagar says that Veedu is nothing but the feet of God. Then does this mean that Thiruvalluvar was an atheist and he didn't believe in God? Today we will see the answer to this question. Now in the next line of the Payiram, Parimelazhagar gives a reason. I had mentioned earlier that Veedu literally means home in Tamil. It comes from the root word Vidudal. Vidudal means to leave or to let go. As soon as we enter our home, we leave behind all our other identities we carry in the society. So similarly, in this journey of Uyir, our final destination seems to be a place of endless happiness, and it is a place where we drop all our acquired identities, and that place is called as Veedu. So now Veedu, they say, is also the feet of God. But God is something that we cannot define completely in words. We may use a list of adjectives to define God, but still such a list will never be complete. We can never completely define God within a boundary or limit. God is the unlimited intelligence, and in front of that unlimited intelligence, that is God, we are a small intelligent entity. Neither is our intelligence sufficient, nor is the language that we use enough to describe God completely. If someone claims that he or she can describe him in words, then he is lying. And those who have experienced such a state of God agree that it is not something you can describe in words or grasp with our intelligence. Why do I say that? Thiruvalluvar is not the only person who says that God cannot be described in words. There was another well-known poet called Sekkizhar in the 12th century, And Sekkizhar wrote a book called Periyapuranam, which is considered as a sacred book by the Tamils. This book is about the lives of the 63 saints who were devoted to God Shiva. These 63 saints are also called as the 63 Nayanmars in Tamil. And it is said that all of them attained higher levels of existence, either the Padam or the Veedu. And Sekkizhar, who was the author of Periyapuranam, he was a prime minister in the court of a Chola king called Anabaya Chola, who was also called as the Kulothunga Chola II. Sekkizhar and the king both were devotees of God Shiva. And one day, the king seemed to be enchanted by the famous Tamil epic called Sivaga Sintamani, which is a story about a prince who married 8 wives. And the prime minister observed that if the king were to take an interest in these kind of books, then the people of the kingdom would follow their king, and that would cause serious consequences. And so he advised the king to turn his attention towards God by reading about the lives of the 63 saints. The king then asked Sekkizhar to compose such a book, as Sekkizhar was a scholar in both the Vedas as well as the Agamas, and being a Saiva saint himself, he knew about the Nayanmars. So that's how Sekkizhar composed the Periyapuranam. Now in that book, the Periyapuranam, which Sekkizhar composed in order for the king to understand God, the first line itself says, God cannot be understood in words. So then might as well close the book and leave, isn't it? Why bother? So the next question that arises for us is, what is the use of a God to us if no one can understand? If you cannot explain in words, then how do you even know that he exists? Parimelazhagar says that even though God cannot be described directly, that is scientifically using thoughts or language, God can be understood as the result of a cause. You see, if I have to describe a book, I can give you the number of pages, the size of the book, the weight of the book, the color and so on. This is called defining a book scientifically. But God cannot be described using exact measurements. However, God can be attained as a result of a cause, and that cause is Thuravu. The cause is Thuravu and the effect is God. Thuravu is nothing but letting go of our attachments. So Thirukkural has spoken in detail about Thuravu, and so by going down that path, one can reach the destination, which is God. So Parimelazhagar says that even though God cannot be explained explicitly in words, the path to him is shown by Thiruvalluvar. If you can recall, the Tamil word for cause is Karanam, and the Tamil word for the effect is Kariyam. So Parimelazhagar says that the Karanam is Thuravaram or Thuravu and the Kariyam is Veedu. So even though there are only 3 big sections or Paal in Thirukkural, it has addressed all the 4 concepts of Purudartham, namely Aram, Porul, Inbam and Veedu. Aram, Porul and Inbam are addressed directly and the Veedu is shown indirectly as the effect of Thuravu. To describe the Veedu in words would amount to speaking a lie. So Thiruvalluvar didn't write a separate section on Veedu. Instead, he has shown us how to get there. So then coming to the other 3. Using our language and intelligence, we can try to understand Aram, Porul and Inbam. So the next question is, what is Aram? I had explained already that Aram is the order in nature, and wise people use a yogic vision or the yoga kachi to observe that order and give it to humans, and their words are considered as Agama Pramanam. But Thiruvalluvar is not the only one who has been able to give Aram in such a manner. There were people even before him who have written about Aram. Manu was one such person. In a much earlier time period, Manu has also written on Aram. Even before that, it is said that there was a book by the name of Aram itself. We don't have that book with us now, but we find later works with reference to such a book. So time and again, whenever it was necessary, we've had people explain Aram to humans. So Parimelazhagar gives a simple definition for Aram. He says that Aram is the do's and don'ts given by people such as Manu. So he acknowledges that time and again, nature produces a person to reveal these things to other people. In Tamil, we say Aram is Vithithana seithal and Vilakkiyathai ozhithal. Vithithana seithal and Vilakkiyathai ozhithal. It means do the things that is prescribed and avoid the things that is prohibited. In simple terms, they are nothing but the do's and the don'ts as given by the people with yogic vision such as Manu or Thiruvalluvar or Parimelazhagar. And then he says there are three parts of Aram called Ozhukam or discipline, Valakku or dispute, and Dandam or punishment. Ozhukam, Valakku, Dandam, discipline, dispute and punishment. But before we get into the details of each of these, it is important to note that the Tamils had a certain way of learning things. If someone wanted to learn a skill or a trade, first the Aram was taught before teaching the subject. For example, yoga is a branch of science. Yoga does not mean bending the body for better health or mental health and things like that. No. Yoga means union with nature, and it was taught as a science. This branch of study has 8 steps: Yamam, Niyamam, Asanam, Pranayamam, Pratyaharam, Dharanam, Dhyanam and Samadhi. The first 4 are the preparatory steps and the next 4 are the actual steps to yoga. Thirukkural goes deeper into the subject of yoga in the later chapters, but for now it is important we understand that the first and the second steps of yoga, that is the Yama and the Niyama, are nothing but Aram. Yama is a set of things that we should avoid and Niyamam is a list of things that we should do. And this is nothing but the do's and don'ts, which is what we call as Aram. But why do we have to learn Aram before any other learning? It is said that yoga will give the practitioner superior abilities called Siddhis. They say that it gives a capacity to shrink oneself in size, the capacity to expand oneself, the capacity to disappear at will and so on. Now what will happen if these skills are acquired by someone who is not trained in Aram? He or she will surely misuse and cause a lot of harm to the self and to others. Just think for a minute, if you or I acquired any of these abilities, what would we do? Surely our imagination runs wild, isn't it? So before learning any skill, not only yoga but any skill, the Tamils had the culture of teaching Aram. And that too, the Tamils had the culture of teaching the things to do, and only then they taught the things to be avoided. See, there are 2 great epics in Tamil. One is the Ramayanam and the Mahabaratham. More than Ramayanam, the Mahabaratham is far more interesting as a story. But in Tamil culture, the Ramayanam holds the first place because Ramayanam is about the Aram of the things to do, and Mahabharata teaches the Aram in the form of things to avoid. So the Tamils prefer to teach the things to do before they taught the things to avoid. There is a reason for this. If you teach children or other people, don't speak lies, instead of saying speak the truth, then just by repeating don't speak lies over and over again, we are using the word lie several times, and that could kindle the desire in some people to taste the habit of speaking a lie. So the Tamils did not believe in advertising the negative things or describing the negative things. For example, if there is a news item that a man was stabbed to death along with all the details of the murder, then this might kindle the desire in some people to taste the act, something like, I wonder how that would be like. And that's a dangerous desire, because desire is the root cause of all our actions. So that's the reason why the Tamils had the habit of teaching the do's before the don'ts. Okay, so let me summarize what we have learned today. Today we have seen how Thiruvalluvar has shown the path to Veedu, and while the book has only 3 sections, even though he did not write an explicit section on Veedu, he has shown the way to get there by way of Thuravu. Thuravu means letting go, and it is the cause or the karanam, and Veedu is the effect or the karyam. And therefore Valluvar has addressed all the 4 subjects of the Purudartham, that is the Aram, Porul, Inbam and Veedu. Aram is defined by Parimelazhagar as do the things that are allowed and avoid the things that are prohibited by people who had the yoga kachi. In Tamil we say this as Vithithana seithal and Vilakkiyathai ozhithal. Aram has 3 parts: discipline, dispute and punishment, and we will explore these topics in the next video. For now I will end here and thank you for listening. Nandri Vanakkam.